Welcome to Coffee and a Weather Map with Jeff. I am Jeff, obviously. I always say that. I don't know why, but you know, that's just one of the things I do. Today is July the 2nd, 2025. Currently in the Eastern time zone, it is 7:39 a.m. So all the maps have been done within roughly the last hour or so. To get things kicked off, we have the surface map over the United States from 9Z, which is 5 a.m. Eastern time or 4 a.m. Central Daylight Time. And we see the cold front that stretches all the way down the East Coast from Maine into the Carolinas before curving off towards the north, or not the north, but the east, and ending as a stationary front right through the central part of Texas, stretching across East Texas into North Texas and over into West Texas there near Midland. As we look at some of the up-close parts of this, we'll take a look at the southeast first. That's where a lot of the weather is going to be during the day today. You can see the cold front that I analyzed here. This was at 10Z or at 6 a.m. So it's been a little bit of time as I've been doing some production on all this. But that front still hasn't really moved much. And there's a fair amount of moisture. I kind of shaded in all the areas where the dew points were above 75 degrees, or at least above 70. 75 has been mainly right along the Gulf Coast. And we can take a look at that here in a little bit with the precipitable water, with how that's expected to go over this next 24 to 72 hours as we look at a lot of this. To look at the Northeast and the upper Great Lakes. Of course, I am in northern Michigan at this point. Here's the 10Z map from this morning. The cold front is well off into New England and upstate New York. And it trails down through eastern part of Pennsylvania, just about ready to get into Jersey, and then across Virginia. Most of the weather action will be along that front, will be mainly along and south of Virginia and into the Carolinas, which we can talk about that in a little bit. Otherwise, we have high pressure over the area. There is a marginal risk that's over northern Michigan for today. Part of that has to do with another front, and we can quickly go back to that. Dropping down out of the Canadian prairies and into the Dakotas and Minnesota over the day today. You can see there's just a little bit of an area of low pressure out there in the west, in the Dakotas, into Wyoming and eastern Montana, which is where the other area of marginal risk for severe weather is. Taking a look at the jet stream, you can see why there's the marginal risks are there along the Canadian border, from stretching pretty much from Montana and into the Pacific Northwest, all the way across into the Great Lakes, and then up into New England, where there's some thunderstorm activity expected, but nothing to be severe at this point. And just kind of look at the satellite map. Satellite image of the United States. Most of the features that you see here are expected to be that correspond with the cold front down the East Coast, as well as all the moisture in Texas currently. Some of that's the remnants of Barry, but mostly it's that monsoonal moisture that just keeps pouring into Texas and New Mexico. And eventually it's actually starting to get into Arizona as we kind of take a look at it. As I talked a little bit about earlier, we do have a marginal risk of severe weather in Michigan that goes out into the rest of the Midwest, over into Minnesota and South Dakota. There's another area, hot spot there of marginal, if you want to call that a hot spot, but it's strong to severe storms possible in Montana, and that kind of stretches back into Oregon, as well as then in the border right there along Utah and Nevada. Otherwise, everywhere else where that front was concerned that comes down the East Coast is basically just general thunderstorms. It's not that something couldn't be severe, but it's so unlikely at this point. But we do expect thunderstorms across those areas. As we get into the second day, so this would be for Thursday, that marginal goes downstate as that front kind of sags in. And what's left of the front is up into the Dakotas where the marginal is. And part of that area of the front that sags down out of Canada over time gets into New England where there is also another marginal. Otherwise, what's left over of that front is just, and the monsoonal moisture keeps spreading up into the rest of the central part of the U.S. over Texas, New Mexico, and into the Rocky Mountains. So they're expecting some thunderstorms across those areas during that time, as well as then what's left of the front, as I was saying, in the East Coast down into the southeastern states. And on day 3, we then have high pressure that kind of builds in across that as all the fronts are kind of washing out or moving away. There's another system that's going to try and move down out of Canada that's going to look like it will cause a marginal risk across Minnesota and the Dakotas, maybe a little bit of the western part of the UP and northern Wisconsin. But the main story really is the heavy rain threat, where we have slight risks across the region. This is through for probably another 15 minutes, because that's where the map defaults. But then as we take a look where that front is along the East Coast, we've got a couple of hot spots with slight risks. That is a 15% chance of exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles of a point. And those areas are like around Norfolk, the Cape, the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then there's also that area down by Tampa Bay, where they've been getting a fair amount of rain with thunderstorms coming in off the Gulf from the little bit of a tropical wave that's been kind of just hanging out there in the Gulf region at this point. Otherwise, as I mentioned before, the remnants, or at least the moisture remnants and the monsoonal moisture that streamed in off of the Gulf has made its way up into New Mexico and Arizona again. So that's where the other slight risk is at this point for day 1. That'd be today through tomorrow morning. Starting tomorrow morning through the next day, we see that marginal area still there in Arizona, New Mexico, and West Texas, and getting up into Colorado with that front that is moving off the East Coast. It kind of just stalls there over Florida, and this is where we start looking at the tropical potential as we get going through the rest of the weekend. At this point, it looks like the heaviest rain still is going to be on the west side of Florida, on the Gulf Coast side. So that will be something to take a look at. Day 3, so this would be Friday the 4th through the morning of the 5th on Saturday. And then we start seeing at least the threat for heavy rain to start going away in some of those areas, with some of those disturbances that were coming down out of Canada that we talked about with severe weather. There are marginal risks for heavy rain up in that area. And then just taking a look at the 4 and 5 day, we see that progression continuing, going into the upper Great Lakes and part of the Central Plains states. All right, so just to kind of take a look at the expected amounts of precipitation over the area, where those slight risks are out in the west, and specifically Arizona and New Mexico. If we kind of zoom in here on New Mexico, we can see some of the areas, and we can just click on some of these points. So there's Las Cruces, where the biggest chance is probably going to be about 1/10 of an inch or slightly greater into the 1/4 inch amounts. It's not that they couldn't get a 1/2 inch amount. That would be possible as well, but that's only a 30% chance. So that's a 70% chance that nothing happens, or I shouldn't say nothing happens, but that it's going to be below that. There is a very small chance, 2% in Las Cruces, for over an inch, or at least an inch. If we get a little bit closer to Alamogordo, then you're looking at the chances going up a little bit. A lot of that precipitation over the next 72 hours is going to be off a little bit to the east of that area. So that's what we're kind of looking at, with the chance for getting at least an inch at 65%. And the expected amount is about 1/2 an inch. So that's near Cloudcroft, New Mexico. Okay, just kind of zooming back out again. And then the big, like I said, the other big hot spot is there near the Tampa area. So for the next 72 hours, and that's what these amounts are that we've been showing, the chances for that, they are actually getting into the, looks like the 4 to 6 inch range right around the Tampa Bay area and Sarasota. Let's see, I believe this is Sarasota. Yep. And so the low end at this point is, the low end chance is at there. So the expected low end of the rain would be 2 inches, the minimum, over the next 72 hours. So that's Wednesday this morning, all the way out through Saturday morning for this time frame. There's a 75% chance that they get at least 3 inches and 52% chance that they get at least 4 inches. So the high end actually, so the 10% chance of getting something would be they have a 10% chance of getting up just a little short of 6 inches at 5.7 inches. That's what the worst case scenario is currently for Sarasota. So those are areas that you'll need to watch out for the possibility of flash flooding. Otherwise, there is one other marginal area which was up. I showed that in Southwest Virginia and across the Capes of North Carolina, as well, including the Outer Banks. And we'll see that as that front goes off, there's going to be a fair amount of rain in those areas, with 1.5 to 2 inches in some of those areas. We'll just click on here. There's New Bern, North Carolina. Their low end expected amount is just a little over 1/2 an inch, and the high end is just a little over 2.5 inches. So that is the amount of precipitation in those areas, and that's why they are also under a slight risk today. But and that's when most of their rain will occur. If we take a look at the 24 hours ending by Thursday morning, that's where most of it is. If you go to the next 24 hours and ending by Friday morning, you'll see that a lot of the rain has moved off, with the only main hotspot, which we've talked about, is down there near Tampa Bay. Okay, let's see here. Moving along. The other thing is the tropics. While we still don't have anything way out in the main development region, as we get closer and closer to the middle of the season, we're still in early, with only the first month having gone by. We're now in July, and climatologically, we don't really start climbing until we get closer into August. However, we do always run the risk of things forming along the East Coast or down into the Gulf due to stalled cold fronts. And in this case, that's what we've got. We have the 40% chance of cyclone formation in the next 7 days. It's really expected over the weekend, so probably in that 3 to 6 day period is when we're expecting the development to occur. The Hurricane Center has now gone to a medium or a 40% chance of cyclone formation in the next 7 days. All right, if we look at some of the ensemble models, starting around the start of it. Here we go. You see that there are some model, the GFS tries to create some low pressure centers, and each one of those numbers is a low pressure center, but it really doesn't show the biggest concentration of them until later on, and this is 144 hours, so that is Tuesday of next week, and that's mainly out in the Atlantic. There are some times when it tries to get something going in the Gulf. You can see all those numbers, but they're so spread out right now that the likelihood is not probably there. But it does try to go both in the Gulf and the Atlantic. If we look at the European, and this is at 48 hours out, which is 8 p.m. on July 3rd, you see that the European does not do a whole lot until 8 p.m. on the 4th, and then it is mainly out in the Atlantic, and then that would tend to go back onto shore in Georgia. But then after that, there's not a whole lot. There's a few things of noise down by South America, but that stays down in that general area. So not a whole lot going on out in the tropics, and that's that area off the East Coast, the southeastern states, is the main issue right now. So with that having been said, we'll take a look at a few of the offices around here. Specifically, we have the Gaylord office, where I'm currently in the area for. They do have a storm threat for today. This is kind of, I think, probably the HER model, showing the thunderstorm progression that is expected. We'll see. It's at least one of the ideas. Strongest storms will be capable of strong gusty winds and some hail. Otherwise, isolated to scattered showers and thunderstorms this afternoon. Rain chances diminished through the night. And looking at the 4th of July weekend that they have, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, partly sunny with low chances of showers and thunderstorms. It's going to be hot on Saturday, where it's going to be 85 to 95 degrees across northern Michigan. The 95 is probably going to be down somewhere around Houghton Lake to Gladwin area. That tends to be the warmest spots in the forecast area. The other, with the 85 closer to Sault Ste. Marie. Friday, on the 4th itself, low chance for showers and thunderstorms, but there is a chance during that time. And temperatures running from 80 to 89. Again, that's pretty much the 80 is in the north, to 89 to down along M55. Sunday, storm chances continue with 78 to 90 degrees across the region. All right, so that takes us to Corpus Christi. We'll start with today. We talked about all the showers and thunderstorms. They're going scattered to numerous in the, especially today, and across the brush country in the Rio Grande Plains, where most of it is expected. Some showers isolated along the coastal bend. Highs in the upper 80s to around 90s area-wide. Not much different for the night, although it looks like most of the precipitation would be lowering, and it's like 5 to 20% chance during the night, and most of that's going to be in the brush country. The beach cast looks like it's a good day for that. There is a moderate risk of rip currents, and it will be somewhat cloudy with all that precipitation that's been coming out of off the Gulf. So just keep an eye out for that. While the waves are only around 3 feet, there still is a moderate risk, and that's probably due to the fact that we're getting longer wave periods with all of that showers and thunderstorms that keep moving off of the Gulf. On the 5-day outlook, Independence Day, they have a 5 to 15% chance for rain during that time, so pretty low. I would suspect that most of that's going to be out over the brush country and the Rio Grande Plains, only because of the fact that that's where most of the monsoonal moisture has been going. Along the Gulf Coast, it's probably going to be on the lower end. as we see Saturday and Sunday is also at only a 5% chance. So really, there's very little chance of anything going on during the Independence Day weekend. Temperatures are going to generally be in the 90s across South Texas. Oh, I was going to show this map of the precipitable water off of Pivotal Weather, and you can kind of see that the moisture goes right up the Rio Grande Valley out of the southern part of the Gulf. You've got that front that comes off the East Coast and just kind of sits over Florida with all that moisture. Some of the moisture I was talking about that goes into Texas then starts to stream back up to the north as the next front comes through, and it goes into the Dakotas and Minnesota and then across to Michigan before it kind of falls apart. And you can just kind of see where all the moisture is going with all that, where everything is expected. And this model is the GFS. And the deterministic, that's the main operational run, shows that has support for what the European is showing, which is mostly off the coast of Florida and Georgia before something comes off or goes back in there, although it's going up into South Carolina and North Carolina through the rest of the week. So we'll see what happens with that. But the moisture looks like it is just going to sit around there. So to recap that, we'll go to the Everything Weather page. Let's go to the radar. This is what I wanted to see. You can see where the very lightest green is the general outlook for thunderstorms. Then the slightly darker one is the marginal risk. For severe thunderstorms in the north, you'll get that little bit slightly darker green. That's where the marginal risk for excessive heavy rain is. The yellow areas here today are the marginal or the slight risk for excessive heavy rain. And you can see that orange area of precipitation down in, or not precipitation, but for tropical development, that 40% medium chance there off the East Coast and a little bit into the Gulf. Okay, with that, keep an eye at the sky and have a good day.